So hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is just a short video for folks who are interested in applying for 2021 Plan H grants. This video is specifically for local Indigenous or non-Indigenous governments who are looking at the community connectedness stream. This year, the Plan H Healthy Communities Capacity Building Fund is offering two streams, one in healthy public policy and one community connectedness. So again, this video is just for those interested in the community connectedness stream. So my name is Emily Johnson. I'm a healthy community planner here at BC Healthy Communities. And for those of you who are not familiar with BCHC, we're a province-wide nonprofit facilitating the ongoing development of healthy and equitable communities. We focus on upstream action and try to address systemic and structural barriers to health and well-being more broadly. And the Plan H program is kind of our main program, which is delivered in partnership with the Ministry of Health. Through this program, we develop and deliver resources like action guides and webinars, and we also administer annual grants, which include cash grants and in-kind support from our staff. Our team is made up of planners, public health and evaluation specialists, community engagement practitioners, and researchers, and we work at the intersection of planning and public health. So just some quick introductions. As I mentioned, my name's Emily Johnson. I'm of primarily Scottish and Swedish ancestry, and I grew up on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy in Calgary. I'm joined today by Claire, our outgoing grants and engagement coordinator, who is of mixed Chinese and French descent. And she was born on the territories of the Canarsie and Lenape peoples in what is now New York. And we are both joining you today from Victoria on the unceded territories of the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanic nations.
And so today's presentation is really about community connectedness and social connectedness. And we've been hearing a lot this year about social isolation, and especially since the onset of the COVID pandemic last year. But it's important to remember what that means without the added layer of meaning since COVID. And so here's a definition of social isolation. It's the disengagement from social ties, institutional connections, or community participation. And isolation's adverse health effects are on par with physical inactivity, obesity, and lack of access to healthcare. And it's actually been found to be equivalent to smoking about 15 cigarettes per day. And it's known to be a contributing factor to the development of chronic disease. And this is obviously a public health issue that we're facing here in BC, but also globally. And then on the flip side, social connectedness generates a positive feedback loop of social, emotional, and physical well-being. Social connectedness is the personal sense of belonging to a group or a community, and it's defined by the frequency as well as the quality of contact with others, personal relationships, and engagement in the community. So social support really is known to protect us from the effects of an adverse event. And there's also a mutual relationship between social connectedness and overall health and well-being. And this hinges on engaging people with each other, with community life, and with their broader social and physical environments. And a socially connected community is a place where everyone feels like they belong. It's a place where neighbors know one another and feel motivated to get involved. They're motivated to build relationships and also contribute to the creation of strong social networks, and they're more likely to be engaged citizens. A socially connected community requires having spaces and events for people to gather, to create new friendships, and to contribute to the community through activities such as volunteering. And it's a very influential determinant of health, which overlaps and integrates with many other elements of a healthy community, which is why we can't really split it into little boxes. And that's the kind of work that the Plan H grants support. It's the coming together of local governments and partners to work on these interrelated issues that contribute to healthy communities. So this is a brief look at health equity. Equity is most simply defined as the redistribution of opportunities, power, and resources to those who face greater systemic barriers to overall health and well-being. And applying an equity lens means acknowledging that systemic and historical discrimination has resulted in the uneven distribution of resources, and that we need to consider how to reduce those negative impacts. And this is really just a reminder to us that some groups face greater barriers to health than others, such as older adults, youth, LGBTQ plus folks, Indigenous people. These are equity seeking groups who are the ones that we need to focus on, not because they're vulnerable, but because it's our systems and our structures that are not set up with their well-being in mind. And social connection or community connectedness, like all opportunities for better health, is not necessarily equitable. For example, people who live with a mental health or substance abuse issue are more susceptible to being socially isolated or excluded because they lack or are denied a whole slew of resources, rights, and opportunities. And this means that they may not have the ability to participate in activities that can increase connection with their community. And in an emergency scenario, having another person to rely on can be the difference between life and death. So the need to consider health equity in our work is more apparent than ever. And by doing so, we really focus on the people who need more support. And that leads us into what local governments can do. And I'll hand this back over to Emily.
Thanks, Claire. So over the years, BCHC has supported a range of projects and initiatives by local governments and their partners to increase social connectedness. And in the Plan H Social Connectedness Action Guide, we broke things down into kind of 3 or 4 realms: policy, program and service delivery, processes and partnerships. And today we'll go through a few examples from past Plan H projects. Just a note that 2 commonly referenced sources from the BCCDC are included here. The first is the Healthy Built Environment Linkages Toolkit, which focuses on public health outcomes related to the built environment. And there's also the 2019 report on the status of social isolation as a planning priority in BC, written by Amy Ludwig and Tom Kozatsky. And I should note that the Healthy Built Environment Toolkit will have a follow-up resource coming out sometime this year on the called the Social Environments Framework, also by the BCCDC, and that'll be an addition to the HBE toolkit. And so keep an eye out for that. So, as Claire mentioned, social connectedness requires spaces for gathering and participation in civic life. Land use planning and neighborhood design is one important tool for local governments, as the design of public space and spaces can encourage human interaction. A great example, obviously these pictures are pre-COVID, but a great example is from the city of Kamloops, their 4th Avenue pedestrian plaza. And so the proposed plaza would create a permanent car-free and community-oriented space in the downtown core, addressing the needs for a public gathering place and improving the pedestrian experience in the city. This is a multi-phase project, which included a pilot project with a temporary plaza that hosted things like street games, patio seating, and workshop and community events. It also included a major community engagement effort funded in part by a Plan H grant to collect feedback on that pilot project. The permanent plaza was adopted into the city's downtown plan, and many groups are now working closely together to bring that plaza to life. So just an example of planning and its influence on the spaces that facilitate social connectedness. And looking at policies, so policies can identify social connectedness as a priority, which in turn helps to support programming and access to funding for projects that aim to strengthen neighborhood connections. The city of Richmond has been working towards an increased sense of connectedness and a feeling of belonging since 2007, when the city partnered with Vancouver Coastal Health and the Richmond School District to develop the Richmond Community Wellness Strategy. One policy outcome that came from this was was in the official community plan, which includes policies related to social inclusion and accessibility, promoting healthy and connected neighborhoods, and opportunities for recreation and community wellness. These high-level strategic plans and policies support the consideration of social connectedness as a priority across all land use areas and planning focus areas. And since the start of the pandemic, food security has definitely been a hot topic, and there's been more of a focus on local food systems. And the Food Secure Oliver Plan highlights the link between food, culture, and social well being. Some policies included in this plan related to social connectedness beyond the built environment include celebrating multicultural food and sharing of Indigenous food knowledge, the inclusion of temporary farm workers into community life, and reducing stigmas associated with the use of food banks and meal programs. And if you're interested in learning more about food security, you may want to visit the PlanH website and check out our most recent Rapid Action Resource series we put together in 2020. These resources were designed to support local non-Indigenous governments and Indigenous governments with an understanding of the equity considerations around various aspects of food security. So I encourage you to have a look at that if you're considering a food security related project in your application. So, in program and service delivery, local governments have a role in facilitating or supporting programs and services that aim to strengthen neighborhood social connections. They can do this by assisting with neighborhood projects, offering municipal facilities for programs, and providing recognition of citizen involvement in volunteering efforts. Couple of examples in the town of Smithers Parks and Recreation Department ran an initiative focused on healthy eating and recreation opportunities for new Canadians and newcomers to the community. This involved engagement to understand the needs of these citizens, as well as the provision of municipal facilities for program delivery. The Connect and Prepare program, currently hosted by the Building Resilient Neighborhood Society, aims to strengthen social connections between neighbors. And groups of neighbors receive free workshops and presentations to learn about emergencies and to support them in developing their own emergency preparedness projects. They also have access to shared emergency supplies and micro grants to help them continue to collaborate after the initial supports are provided. And I really like this example as it is very closely related to the current situation. You know, we're kind of starting to move beyond the response and hopefully into the recovery phase. And um, evidence suggests that being socially isolated makes it more difficult for people to respond to emergency events. Um, and it has also shown that support from friends and family, as well as local community networks, are linked to better emergency preparedness and response. So, yeah, as we move into kind of that recovery stage of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think social connections and those social networks will be very important to leverage as you're thinking about what assets there are in your community that you can kind of use to come out the other side of this really challenging year, which hopefully is almost over. And so, a couple of process and partnership examples. So, a process example comes from the township of Esquimalt, who embarked on an engagement project to understand people's current experiences living in multifamily housing and to inform design guidelines to steer future development. The project focused on equitable participation in local government policy and decision making and aimed to enhance a sense of belonging and social well being for all residents, both through their engagement process as well as through the resulting design guidelines. Community organizations also play an important role in providing programs to build social connections, and local governments can partner with these organizations and provide program funding, share resources and knowledge, and develop collaborative strategies. So, an example from the city of Vancouver, the Hey Neighbor Collective brings together housing providers, researchers, well being experts, local and regional governments, housing associations, and health authorities to experiment with and learn about ways to effectively build community, social connectedness, and resilience. They focus specifically on high density and high rise communities as they are located in Vancouver. Um, but the main point here is the collective working together across sectors to share knowledge and to collaborate on program delivery and evaluation. And finally, the City of Nelson, which is kind of a process and partnership example, they implemented a street culture collaborative, and they work with relevant service providers to identify members of Nelson's street culture population. They facilitate engagement to assess the immediate and long term needs for health and safety among this group, and then offer a range of supports and services designed to meet those needs. So the focus here is on improving the health and well-being of all community members and building bridges between the street community and other Nelson residents. And the collaborative in Nelson was born out of the recognition that the street culture population wasn't really going anywhere. They're part of the community, and they're often isolated and excluded. And no one community organization, or not only the police service, has the capacity to provide all of the supports and services required. I think this example, drawing on this example, will be very relevant for this year, as you know, we have seen some tensions rising with street populations and local businesses or local governments, and you know, really finding a way to come together and recognize that everyone is part of the community and deserves support and needs to be included in any social connectedness initiatives is super important. So yeah, just wanted to put that in your brain. So what does all of this mean moving forward? So when we're working towards community and social connectedness at this time in particular, it's important to use and apply an equity lens. This means considering experiences outside of our own and considering those folks who are more susceptible to social isolation and exclusion. We need to remember to continue to engage with community members on what their priorities and needs are in the recovery phases of the pandemic, and keep in mind that people with lived experiences are experts in what they need. We recognize that it is more difficult to engage with people online, and everything takes a lot longer, is what we've been hearing from communities. Things take about 3 times as long. So, really creating space in your engagement plans um, for that added effort in engaging online, and trying to continue to be creative. I know we're kind of at the end, or kind of far into this process, and it's pretty tiring and everyone's pretty tired, but you know, there we can still engage and we need to keep trying to be creative. So on the BCHC website, we've kind of collected some resources for online engagement, so have a look at that for some inspiration if you're feeling like you're out of ideas. And finally, I want to reiterate how important multi-sectoral collaboration is. Collaborating across municipal boundaries and strengthening partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities is also very important for increasing local capacity to provide programs and services. And as we move kind of from the emergency response to the recovery, all sectors will really need to work together to provide the social, cultural, and psychological support required in their communities. It's way too much for one group or one local government to take on by themselves. So we really encourage you to consider who you can partner with and who can support you with your projects. Yeah, so I'll hand it to Claire to kind of outline a bit more about the two streams for this year.
So this is a brief overview of the Plan H grants for 2021. So far, Plan H has distributed over 200 grants to communities all across the province and over $1.5 million. The two streams for this year, on the right, you'll see the Healthy Public Policy stream. And the objective of this stream is to foster the development of healthy public policy at the local government level. There are 10 grants available, each at $15,000. And on the left, you'll see the Community Connectedness stream. And the objective, as we've been saying, of these projects would be to enhance a sense of belonging within a local community. These grants are $5,000 each, and there are 20 available grants this year. As you heard from Emily, this kind of work can look quite different from community to community and can use any number of approaches, from policy work to programming, as she outlined earlier. So this is a very flexible grant stream, the Community Connectedness stream. It could be a project that addresses the mental health dimensions of community resilience following COVID, or it could also be including community connectedness as a part of an OCP review. June 1st is the application deadline, and projects will be taking place from September 2021 to September 2022. But please check back frequently onto the planh.ca website for updates, because there are sometimes delays or changes in dates. So just check out our website to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information.
Great. So yeah, hopefully some of the examples we talked about today have inspired some ideas. We're always here to chat more about it. If you have an idea and you're not sure if it would be eligible, please feel free to reach out. You can email the grants@planh.ca email address and someone will get back to you. And we want to leave you with the final thought that upstream health issues like social isolation are exacerbated by inequities. So this was made clear in 2020, but it's important not to lose that sense of urgency as the dust kind of settles. And it's important to keep pushing for connected, resilient, and most importantly, equitable community processes and policies. So good luck to all of you, and we look forward to seeing your applications.